Good morning. Welcome to EBAI session. So, as expected, there are hardly any audience, but we'll start in time. Uh, so, to start with, I'll first speaker is Dr. Sunita Chaurasia, who will be speaking on iBanking beyond corneas. Is 9? Is not 9? 2 more minutes, is it? Because he has to go for another I see.
Thank you, Dr. Sujata, and good morning, everyone. So, the iBanking activities beyond corneas, I'll be talking on this topic. So, when we look into the evolution of keratoplasty, and it's very similar to a modern day epic, right from the days of initial conceptualization of xenotransplantation, we moved to the present day modern techniques of transplantation. The first transplant happened in 1905 by Dr. Edward Zerm, and the first eye bank established in the year 1944, way after the first transplantation was done. The evolution of eye banks, they initially started as institutions responsible for collecting, processing, distributing the corneas for transplantation in a timely manner to the needy patients. If you look at the keratoplasty milestone, after Zerm's milestone, only a few improvements were made over the next 100 years, and these were in terms of advanced microscope, sutures, antibiotics, steroids, and not much was done in the keratoplasty techniques. But late 1990s saw an explosion of selective corneal transplantation techniques, especially in the endothelial transplants. PLK, or the posterior lamellar keratoplasty, and DLEK evolved between the years 1998 to 2006. It started off with Gerrit Melly's proposal of describing this technique of posterior lamellar keratoplasty, which was called PLK in the beginning. Thereafter, it was called DLEK and was popularized in the US. Price called DSEC because it was just involved stripping of the Descemet's membrane without a dissection of the posterior cornea, and this was in 2005. Thereafter came Automata DSEC, which is in 2006. Now, this marked an important beginning because this was the time point where surgical steps of DSEC were performed in the eye banks. And this was like a revolutionary concept of having automated microkeratom system in the eye banks to do the processed tissue. DMEC evolved in 2006 parallel, and Melis et al. Successfully introduced the technique of DM transplantation. Parallel was endothelial cell injection therapy. The work was going on from the Nancy Joyce group in the year 2000, where she discovered and she was working on human corneal endothelial cells, which could proliferate and replicate under special conditions. Year 2018 saw the Kinoshida's group report the successful outcomes of endothelial cell injection treatment for corneal edema. DALC was a parallel technique which evolved in 2002 with the big bubble technique proposed by Anwar and Teekman et al. And this was a very standard and reproducible technique, made lamellar surgeries, anterior lamellar corneal surgeries, more popular and predictable. So the present day eye banks have expanded roles and responsibilities beyond just cornea collection. This has simply been because the eye banking had to keep pace with the changing practice patterns and newer techniques in the corneal transplantation. So looking into many of them, initially the first thing which got adapted, at least in India, was donor cornea evaluation, which earlier was performed by the clinicians and then moved on to the technician-based donor cornea evaluation. Now this was again an important decision in the modern day eye banking because this helped in standardizing and streamlining the process of donor cornea evaluation and allocation. Pre-prepared tissue for posterior lamellar surgery, this came as a natural consequence of the increased popularity of endothelial keratoplasty. This helped in significantly reducing the surgical times and reduce the unwanted surgery cancellation which could happen because of unexpected tissue loss preparations at the time of surgery. Pre-prepared tissue for DSEC has been adopted in several eye banks in India as well, and routinely is a favored strategy of endothelial keratoplasty. Pre-prepared tissue for DMEC evolved much earlier in the US, and it has been a little slow in India. The various ways of providing the pre-prepared tissues for DMEC have been pre-stripped cornea or in the form of scroll, which could be free-floating, or the preloaded in various injectors. So we have been providing pre-prepared DMEC tissue at RIEB from the last 6 months onwards, and so far 50 corneas have been distributed for transplantation. So the way it is provided is with a pre-strip with a stromal window, and marking, if needed, can be done prior to the surgery. Another aspect of eye banking activities has been the AMG preparation. and distribution. Though this is not universally done in all eye banks, many eye banks have adopted this as an important activity in their infrastructure. Patch grafts for glaucoma shunts either require a cornea or a scleral tissue, and scleral preservation is an important routine activity. The eyeballs are collected for scleral preservation as well for these surgeries. Now, what about the future of eye banking activities? Now, eye banking, we may get involved in delivery of several translational research products and technology, and this may happen in the near future. Many of these things are already conceptualized and are also implemented in a limited way. One of these is bioengineered corneas, which are basically corneal equivalents and cellular scaffolds for corneal surgeries. And they are obtained from the recombinant human collagen. Now, iBank may be the starting point or the point of contact for distribution of these bioengineered corneas. Corneal lenticulae for refractive surgeries and stromal augmentation in keratoconus. Corneal lenticulae extracted during SMILE procedure are explored actually as a possibility for correcting hyperopia and also for managing cases of keratoconus. These may need decellularization. This is again one activity which may be adopted in the eye banks in the near future. Tissue culture and cell-based therapy, which is involving around engineered and cultured endothelial cell therapy for endothelial diseases, is also is an upcoming thing in the US eye banks and may soon see application in the eye banks, and maybe one point where eye banks become the source of providing these cultured endothelial cells. And similar may happen with the cultured epithelial and stromal cells for ocular surface disorders and stromal scars and other disorders respectively. So the future of eye banking is going to evolve into several other things. With this, I end this presentation, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you. Morning.
Thanks, Sunita. I remember one talk I gave in a medical college. He was asking why it is called eye bank, why not cornea bank. So I had to tell that not only cornea, we deal with other things also. I think Dr. Mascati, eye bank, you prepare autologous serum also in addition to.
Yes. We give sclera, we prepare autologous serum, we give amniotic membrane. So there's lots of things that an eye bank, and it's nice to have it an eye bank because in the public image, not everyone knows what cornea means. Everyone knows what eye means, but explaining cornea is again a different. So when you start a talk on eye donation, you have to first tell them that it's not the eye which is eye is donated, but the eye is not transplanted. So eye bank is a useful, and I came in the middle of your talk, but I don't know whether you mentioned vision graft, which is there in the US for quite some time. Of course, there they use it. Vision graft is nothing except cornea, which is gamma irradiated, and all the cells are killed in that. So 80% of their vision grafts in the US is used for glaucoma surgeries, for covering tubes and things like that. But 20% is used for providing an immediate tectonic cover. And we had done a sort of agreement with the US IFTEB, and unfortunately because of COVID and because of our own Maharashtra government regulations, we couldn't get that technology in. But now that COVID is gone, and our government, after filing a successful writ petition by our eye bank in the court, we got them to allow us to export means send tissue out of Maharashtra, which was not allowed since 2008. We are now trying to revive this vision graft. Yeah.
I think it will be a good move because the corneas which are not being utilized.
Yes.
And you'll have a long-term shelf life.
3 years.
Corneas and an application.
2 to 3 years at room temperature. Yes.
So I have one suggestion. We have a lot of sclera with us in the eye banks, all the eye banks. And we have done some work, and already it's available in the literature that you can gamma irradiate sclera or any other tissue also. So my suggestion is that eye bank association should put the scleral pieces and sterilize it and then supply to all the glaucoma surgeons, because some of the glaucoma surgeons, they face a lot of problems. They do contact us, we do give them, but again that is glycerin preserved and there is always a risk of infection, whereas the gamma irradiated tissue will be much safer and it can be kept at room temperature and can be used as and when desired. That's my suggestion.
Our eye bank keeps the sclera in absolute alcohol.
We also
Yeah. So that again has a fairly long shelf life.
I agree with that, sir. But whatever,
it cannot be transported. That is the issue.
But whatever we keep in solution and all that, the shelf life will always be a problem. And in case there is any break in the sterilization process, it will be a problem. Transportation will be a problem.
Yes.
But I think gamma irradiated tissue, particularly the sclera, for even the cornea can be done. But for that, I think these Dr. Sunita will know more, that they have to lyophilize or whatever process. But sclera can be easily done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sunita. So Hitendra is not available. So we'll go to the next talk by Dr. Karan Bhatia, Managing Expectation Eye Bank versus Corneal Surgeon. How are you?
All good, thank you.
I did not see you in the whole meeting.
Somewhere there, some presentation just I finished with game.
So thank you for this wonderful opportunity. I'll be talking about managing expectations, eye bank versus the cornea surgeon. Close that. Yeah. So we have various types of centers. We have the eye banks, we have the eye retrieval centers, and then we have the corneal transplantation centers. Particularly for private practitioners such as myself, we have a lot of corneal transplantation centers. A big challenge which Raki and I were also talking about is the HOTA permission, and EBAI needs to do something about it because it's a long process and it's really difficult, particularly in Uttar Pradesh where I'm working. It's a big problem, and there's one center which for about more than a year we are waiting for the permission so that I can do the transplants. Eye donation promotion needs to happen a lot more because we are not utilized. We are still not having, if you compare the north to the south, South India has much more eye donation in comparison to the north. So we need to bring that awareness about it so that we have more corneas for utilization. The retrieval process should be, it's extremely important, and it should be done by a doctor or a trained technician. Gown and gloves should be worn after a proper hand wash. Instrumentation such as enucleation set or a corneal squirrel rim excision, the set for that should be available. A full complete betadine cleaning and draping of the eyes should be done. Installation of antibiotic eye drops should be done. They should be the performance of the procedure basically should be done under complete sterile precautions, and a prosthesis should be placed, but particularly if you're just taking out the rim. So you need to maintain a laminar airflow with class 5 standards when you are doing the tissue processing in an accredited operating room or in another environment which is documented annually to have less than 25 colony forming units per 90 mm settle plate per 1 hour exposure. This is according to the standards of eye banking in India, which was published in 2020. What we need to do is we need to prevent cross contamination and basically mixing up of the labels. Couple of cases that happened to me, I had 2 consecutive cases of penetrating keratoplasty about a year back, 2 years back, which resulted in post-keratoplasty keratitis and endophthalmitis. We managed to save both the eyes, but it was, we tried to do, there was something that was there. So a proper sterilization of the entire, the tissue needs to be maintained. This one challenges that we do face is sometimes when you're doing particularly a manual desec, the scleral rim is insufficient in the corneas that we have. So at least a 3 to 4 mm rim should be there, or a 14 mm total area, because otherwise it doesn't stick, and the chances of perforation are much more and the loss of tissue. I had, when I was in Sitapur before, I had discussed this with the eye bank people, and then they were getting it from Arvind, I think, the bottles in which it was stored, and then they had increased to make it a little bit larger ones so that the rims can be fitted, because everybody doesn't have access to an automated or a desec tissue. The choice of preservative media also becomes important, and according to this article, Cornisol and Optisol are the ones that are preferred. Now, what the surgeon expects is that, you should be a donor serologically negative, donor should be COVID negative, a good quality tissue, and time, obviously. So for the specific quality tissue requirement, if there's a therapeutic or a tectonic keratoplasty, anything is okay. In COVID times, we've used glycerin preserved corneas and whatever we could do, leftover DALC tissues, or when you've done a desec, whatever stroma has remained, we've done keratoplasties with that just to save the eye. For an optical, ideally you would want an endothelial count more than 2000 or 2500. For depends on the eye banks. A pediatric, you would prefer more than 2500 cell count and preferably a younger donor. For a DALC, anything is okay, but for a DSEC or a DSEC, I would prefer somewhere more than 2000 or 2500. For a DMEC, particularly more than 2500, with the age of the donor being more than 50, because it's not everybody can do dissection for prepare the donor in 40 or less than 40. The donor sheet is extremely important, and I believe somebody is talking about it, so I won't get into details, but it should have the age, the cause of death, the serology, the COVID status, grading of the tissue, the endothelial cell count, and the specular image as well. The grading of the tissue is beautifully shown in this article, where it graded into the excellent category, very good, good, fair, and the poor categories. I won't go into details from this. So time becomes a very extremely important thing that we have, and the first thing is from the retrieval of the tissue to the eye bank, and what time you're taking it out after the death also. This needs to be minimized so that a better quality tissue is available for use. The delivery time also needs to be expedited. It's a big challenge. Sometimes we have patients waiting, but we do not get the tissue from the eye bank, particularly if you're a corneal transplantation center and you don't have your own eye bank. So this times, particularly in emergency cases, needs to be expedited. The need for pre-cut tissue was already told by Sunita ma'am, but DSEC tissue is available. DMEC tissue, I just got to know they have started preparing for 6 months, but it's not only 50 tissues they prepared. We need to have more of this. Because I would say in individual practices, it becomes a challenge, particularly to get these tissues. And if there's a loss of tissue, you get problems. You won't be able to do the keratoplasty. There sometimes the cell counts what are mentioned are the cell counts of before the dissection was done. So is there some way, particularly for DSEC tissue or something, where we could get out the difference in the cell counts between the pre-cut and the non-cut tissue? If that we get, would be great. Sometimes there could be a mismatch of the margin, particularly if you're doing via microkeratome. If it's eccentric, how to know the margin of the pre-cut, because sometimes it can be superficially dissected and sometimes full. So what we can a challenge that happens is also the need for a backup tissue. So suppose if that tissue gets damaged, and particularly if I'm preparing it manually, I would get stuck if that tissue gets damaged. It was a recent last speaker also spoke about the need for the utilization of unutilized tissue, what to do with that, and especially if it's pre-cut, because you don't want to waste those corneas. So there needs to be a process or something by which it can be expedited, or a network where it can be put on, so if somebody else can utilize it and in the shelf life, and it's not wasted and can be used for somebody's benefit. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karan. Yeah, we can do in here. I remember I delivered this talk last time, and one of the expectation from surgeon is cost always. Yes. And expectation from iBank is the recipient information. Unfortunately, when most of the iBank, they don't get the recipient data. Despite repeated reminder, we don't get. So that is from the iBank. Even EBAI also, no data about the collection and utilization.
Yes.
So I think this is a good forum to actually discuss about the HOTA. That's the one that you had, I think, very rightly raised. Probably while health is a state subject, there are certain connotations to that which have national implications. Number one is HOTA, and very closely linked to that, what we feel, and this is a felt need, is the unutilized tissue, meaning that the tissue, though unutilized, there is a lot of effort on the ground team, and it is important for making it available to people who need it. That might be in any part of the country where there might not be iBank resources, or there might not be a need to even develop it, because if we can have a supply chain logistics.
Absolutely.
So probably this is not really a question, but rather a comment that can we have a consensus at a national level to at least develop, though HOTA will need a state authorization, but at least have a national level travel or transport logistics. One could be like approaching Civil Aviation Ministry for carrying off the carriers, carrying it as a pro bono, or at a very whatever they can decide is something which is a more reasonable expenditure in carrying this cornea. to them, because at least that way a national system can exist where we can make it reach to places where surgeons would need it. And second is the pricing, which was just brought out. I think again we need to consider that at one end we can let the tissue go waste, or we just put it at a nominal rate at whatever we may think. This is not about buying and selling of tissue. I'm sorry if I'm giving that impression, but that's not. It is about, like in some way at one end we are seeing that this is a tissue which is going to the yellow bin basically. So in that context, thank you.
I would congratulate Dr. Karan for excellent presentation. My concern is that as a corneal transplant surgeon, we should not only look at the endothelial cell counts, which most of us, we do that, because you need to take holistic approach. What is the age? What is the cause of death? What is the how much for time the patient was on ventilator, if the information is available, and conditions like hanging. The problem is that the cell count will be very good. Young people, they commit suicide, but you don't know when the death actually occurred. So, because when the patient is brought to the hospital, the cause of death, they will mention approximately only. So this is one area where surgeons should be very cautious. And some of the gray areas which are left to the surgeon, if you wish, you can use it. That should be, I think, clarified by Eye Bank Association of India. There are so many examples, but one or two examples are, one is that the patient has died because of drowning. Now they say it's clear water, it's contaminated water. Every water is contaminated water. So it should be made very clear that you cannot use it. If you leave to the surgeon will look at the cell count, will use it, and will get into the problem. Same thing is for the advanced cancer patients. And that also is very dangerous because the patient has already undergone chemotherapy, all therapies. So the tissue is not of that quality as the cell count indicate. Of course, I think burns and all that people don't use. That's a standard one. The other issue is very important, that we should get a good scleroderm. For that, I think we have earlier also discussed. We have 14 millimeter turfine. Even if you don't want to use it for the cutting because you want to cut the cost when you are retrieving the tissue, you can use it just to mark, so that from where you are cutting it. So that would be a very good idea. I think that will eliminate the problem, because that problem most of us face when we are either using laser penetrating keratoplasty or DLK or some other procedure like DSEC. So this problem is a common problem. I think that should be circular from the Eye Bank Association.
Yeah, I agree that this trypine thing we have started doing. Sir was telling about the 14 millimeter trypine, 16 millimeter trypine. But the gray area, I think it will remain whatever you do unless there is a scientific evidence. But to get the scientific evidence, forget about drowning. That's not one of the main causes for donation or death or donation. I always think about septicemia and VDRL positive. At least VDRL positive should be on all Eye Bank meeting I raised. Now at least I'm in EBAI. Let us see what we can do, because VDRL positive, anytime it is false positive. Nobody goes to detail, just as wasted. It is a surrogate marker for HIV. But if you are getting HIV negative, should we do another test or should we remove completely? Those gray areas is, many times it is not surgeon. Many times they say it's Eye Bank medical director. Eye Bank medical director, what is the discretion? Medical director will decide. But septicemia, at least some major study we can do, and because septicemia is one of the big cause for rejection of the tissue, throwing out the tissue. No, you get the ream culture, not ream culture, even cornea culture. Bring the cornea and do culture. But for that you need a large volume. That is, unless you do a large volume, the sample size will be less. So culture of the cornea, that is the only thing. But or blood culture.
No, the blood
culture is already there.
Already there. That's what I was saying. Pre-death, the patient dying of septicemia, they're usually doing WBC counts. That's how we know it is septicemia. The first thing is the definition of septicemia varies from person to person. Some people say anything above 10,000, above 15,000, above 25,000 WBC count is septicemia. So really, we need to first be clear on what we are talking. And as Dr. Sujata is saying, that you simply do take 100 corneas from septicemia patients which you're not using and culture them and see whether any of them had any infection whatsoever. And if you've taken from somebody who said 25,000 plus cell count and there's zero growth in culture.
The concern here was that it might be a little difficult to predict the outcomes of rim culture.
Not rim,
or even the cornea culture.
Take the cornea.
Yes. So understood, because these are tissues which we are not utilizing.
Not utilizing.
Either way. So even if we use the whole cornea, the predictability of such a culture does not usually correlate to infection in the recipient. And this has been a major limitation of
the sample size has to be adequate so that you can get over these issues.
And ultimately also we probably need to also weigh in that even if we assume that these are safe tissues to recover, we already are with a surplus of tissues which we probably are not utilizing, meaning that this may not, adding this indication may not significantly change our recovery or harvesting of corneas, adding one such indication.
No, there I don't agree with you, because there is a lot of mismatch between, there are people who got surplus tissue and there are a lot of people who are crying out for tissue.
Yes.
So we need to find out how we can reduce this mismatch and make tissue available uniformly across the country actually.
Agreed.
So yes, Rekha.
Septicemia, there's a pre-calcitonin test. So normally when eye donation counselors are at the hospital, we tell them to check for the pre-calcitonin test. That's one of the tests they do in all septicemia cases. And it is positive. And we also did a rim culture. And we found that the rim culture was not positive. It was only about 20% was positive. In all others, it was negative. This was within 6 hours of death. But the pre-calcitonin test was positive almost in about 80% of the cases. So we take that as an indication when they are doing the screening and they say septicemia, we try to tell the EDC checks for that test. And all hospitals do this test.
So if it is positive, then you don't take the tissue.
Don't take it.
Okay.
I don't know whether the government hospital they do all this test pre-calcitonin.
It's not a very expensive test.
No, it's not an expensive
Okay.
test. And the kits are available. You can do it in the iPad also.
Oh, I
They're
see.
not expensive.
Okay.
Yeah, like poisoning. Initially, I remember to start with, you are not taking organophosphorus poisoning. Because people publish, then same thing, snake bite, same thing, drowning. So once you publish, scientifically, there is evidence to continue. And always like EBAI, this iBank book has been, NPCP book is 2020. Maybe the latest version we can add or we can remove something. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Karan.
Next, Arvind. Regarding Dr. Mascati, any opinion about Arvind's first concern about sending cornea to the air carrier? Because now we face the problem. Air India has stopped from many places. So we're not able to send by train and all those.
Yeah. Long back, we had, at least our iBank had tied up with the then existing airlines. And they used to carry our tissue, Jet Airways and Damania Airways and things. But all these airlines are now folding up new airlines. So every time you'll have to make new MOUs. And it's not difficult. You just have to reach out to somebody senior there and explain to them. They issue a fatwa to their employees and then it can be done.
Sir, I think there is a individual iBank policy, because there are certain iBanks when the Indian, like Air India flight is not available, when we request them to send by the private carrier, they do send us and we pay the charges.
Yes.
But it's quite expensive. Very expensive.
Doesn't matter. We have requested even Bhubaneswar iBank. So, but some of the iBanks, they do it regularly and we are getting the tissues. But some of the iBanks, I think they have policy not to use the private carriers. So that is a problem.
From EBAI
It doesn't
side,
add much
we've
cost.
given
As
It's
far
not
as
a big cost.
couriers are, airlines is a different thing. But as far as couriers, many couriers refuse to carry.
No, couriers
They don't take. Yeah.
Couriers also we get.
Some take, some don't take.
Some take, some don't take. But we are getting even through couriers also, by train from Bhubaneswar. But I think private carriers, they do like deliver, and it's not much cost. I think 1,500 or something, not more than that.
Yeah.
So I request, if there is a problem, private carriers can be used.
Yeah.
So a very good morning to all. my discussion for the day would be that how middle income nations can help support iBanking activities in low income nations. The burden of the disease is pretty high, and it is the fourth leading cause of global blindness. Corneal blindness is quite frequent in the developing nations where most of the cornea blind live. And it also has a important socio-economic impact. And this is because it affects the younger population, and therefore it affects their visual health. This map shows that where most of the cornea blind people live, and the size of the countries are proportionately bloated to where most people have corneal related blindness. And the color coding suggests that what is the country readiness, meaning that those countries which are purple like in India, most of the cornea blindness exists here, and the state of readiness to combat that blindness also exists, as compared to Africa, where cornea blindness is high but the preparedness to handle cornea blindness is low, and green is a medium to low level. So then most of Southeast Asia also, while the cornea blindness is fairly prevalent, the infrastructure to deal with that cornea blindness does not exist, or rather it is ill prepared to meet the burden. And therefore it is important to discuss the corneal blindness in this context. And this is a two-pronged strategy. Number one is to improve the harvesting of the corneas and also develop the eye banking infrastructure. If we purely look at the numbers, then what we see is that there is a wide variability amongst nations. So nations such as Brazil and India have very high numbers, but then there are also equally prevalent geographical areas where not a large number of transplants are being done over here. Whereas if we look at, say, countries like Ethiopia and Indonesia, even the national statistics are quite low. So in this context, in this background, it's important to understand the Indian model and the way it has grown in the last couple of decades. And these figures show that there is a doubling of the corneal collection and a tripling of the utilization and a improvement in the utilization rate. So the challenges always remain creating the awareness, creating an infrastructure, creating a collaboration with various organizations across the country, developing a robust HCRP, shifting to those areas where we can harvest good quality corneas which can ultimately be utilized. And that is met in addition with handling about the developing the training infrastructure, attracting talent to this field, procuring the equipment and training the surgeons to effectively use the tissues as well. So some of the experiences that we have had at LV Prasad, one of them was the Myanmar model, where we came forth with a collaborative approach to help develop tissue collections in Myanmar. We partnered with the University of Sydney from Dr. Gerard Sutton's group, LV Prasad, and Professor E. Oh, she is the professor at Myanmar Eye Ear Hospital. So one was to engage the local authorities and then also install some equipment, and this was the biological safety cabinet that was installed there. We also had people from Myanmar who were trained at LV Prasad, and we continuously engage with them on an online eco-related classroom. The eco is a nationwide classroom where we help to learn from each other's experiences. And I'm quite happy to say that under our joint consensus, we are slowly trying to have a national level eco in iBanking in India as well. Probably in a couple of months, we are going to launch this too. So all this ultimately led to improvement in tissue harvesting and utilization. The blue graph shows the number of corneas that were harvested in the last decade. From 2007 to 11, there was a progressive decline. But this is not really a failure of iBanking, because Myanmar has traditionally been going through several social upheavals, and a lot of political change was also happening, and even now it is behind the Iron Curtain. But until that happened, from 2011 to 16, there were a very progressive strides with rapid increase of the number of corneas that were harvested by the eye banks of Mandalay and from Rangoon, from Yangon. So the future directions will be to focus on those areas adjacent to India, where even if we are not in a position because of administrative regulations to send the tissues pro bono, but at least to help develop, create awareness systems, train people, and put them on their, like they make them self-reliant, that at least they can combat their nation's corneal blindness. And I will take this opportunity about the work that was done by the LV Prasad team over the period of years, where there was a consistent push for developing the iBanking infrastructure, iBanking training model, and a successful collaboration with NGOs and a wide distribution of the trainees in the national and international field, and also in West Africa, where we are slowly making steps to help develop iBanking services. So this mentoring, this continuous engagement, continuing to talk with each other is probably the way forward in developing a resource center, and ultimately helping mentor people who are around us but who may not have that infrastructure to develop and meet their corneal blindness. Thank you very much for your patience here.
Any comments?
Yeah, so what does the LV Prasad team, for example, if you go to Africa or something, so what exactly do you keep personnel there who come and stay there for 3 months or 6 months or something, or you come and go? Or
so we have not started the Africa model yet, but there is a possibility of. But what we did with the Myanmar model was that we first engaged with the cornea surgeons there, created a political consensus, a goodwill with the religious community leaders, and that helped create awareness about this activity. But this was done by people who are in the lead of the community, amongst their community, not by us. And regarding the training, we asked them to identify people who will be willing to pursue this say as a cornea recovery specialist. And then we had them over at LV Prasad and trained them, and then send them back. And then in addition, apart from that, there are several documentation procedures that they need to follow, the checklists, the consents and all. We helped them create those and audited their consistency in which they were following these practices.
Okay, yeah. Thanks. Because we did a similar project with our iBank with Dhaka in Bangladesh, and we failed miserably. I mean, we went twice there. What you said is that we tried to get them interested in the documentation and other things. In Bangladesh, they have their biggest blood donors. The voluntary organization which works is a group of interns. So what happens that just like Rotary or Lions, they have a social organization amongst the interns. So almost every intern who finishes his MBBS, in that 1 year, he's recruited in that, and they help to organize blood donations everywhere. So we try to use the same group to promote eye donations as well. So those interns were promoting eye donation, and we train them in collection. So again, interns being MBBS level, it was easier to train them in surgery, in collection of corneas. But where we failed was in enthusing the eye banks themselves. Right. So the amount of apathy and the amount, so when we donated equipment, we donated the clean air systems and HEPA filters and all sorts of things. It just went into disuse atrophy because there was no connect between the interns. So then the interns stopped promoting eye donation, because if they got the eyeballs, then the eye bank was very lethargic. That's why I asked you. It has to be a team.
Yes, yes. And also, inevitably, when we go to different communities or in different nations, the felt need might be different. For example, in some countries, while they are dealing with corneal blindness, probably infantile malnutrition or vaccination could be more burning topics for them. Maternal health, child health could be more important than, say, ocular health. That could be one possibility. There are also cultural taboos in many places. Many superstitions are also there. So it is a culmination of multiple factors that ensure a success. And of course, a political will is definitely required. So all these factors definitely contribute. But what we can at least have a consensus is that while we strengthen internal systems, probably collaborating in the region might also help elevate the status of the robustness of our systems, or rather externally validate them as well.
Yeah, training definitely we can help, but the law
Yes.
is difficult.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. And there should be a willingness from the other person to learn while we might be willing to teach. So that also is important in that context.
What we learned from our Bangladesh experience is that we need to do better homework before we jumped in because we got a call from the Rotary there saying we want help. So we found the easiest was checkbook diplomacy. We spent money and gave them equipment and all that. But I think our homework was lacking as to what will happen. And we just wasted resources.
Yeah.
Thanks.
This is a very interesting experience that you shared.
Okay. So Rakhi gave me this topic. I like that, at least some thought process. So I'll be speaking for planning for 2030. So I thought my term is till 2025, but unless we plan from now, we can think of, I like to have input, any suggestion from my talk. So the goal is to definitely collection and utilization, then the quality control and accreditation system, and graft registry, and sending tissue across the border. So as we all know, it's a long back, but 1 lakh cornea transplant is required. For that 50% utilization, so we need 2 lakhs. Like Arvind So's collection has doubled and our utilization is tripled, but still we are much behind the targeted number. You can see the highest till now is 57,000 collection, and all of us know 2020-21 has gone deep. So for this target, again the calculation was we can do in 50 eye banks 4,000 cornea per year. But how many eye bank do 4,000? But in pen and paper we have 735 eye banks, and if you see 4,000, only one eye bank is 4,000. So this is the latest 2000, not 2022-23, 2021-22, 2022-23 is yet to come. So except one eye bank, we're not, and even if you see that more than 1,000 also, hardly few eye banks are more than 1,000. So this is EBAI data. I don't know whether some people send or don't send. So the planning is to have more eye collection center than more eye banks, because the eye bank is just a namesake, but eye collection center is more required than eye bank. And eye banking activity in different parts of the country, because if you see Northeast, hardly any eye bank, and to do that we need manpower also. Just opening will not enough. So training center, Rakhi will touch on training center in different zones of the country. And although I'll say that voluntary things should increase, but we should focus more on HCRP. If you see different zone utilization, the east zone is the least, and this is south zone is the most in 2000. If you see the 2010, 2015, 2020, in 2020 it has increased, south zone has increased significantly. Coming to utilization, there should be more emphasis on utilization rather than collection. Although many eye bank has moved that from utilization is the target, not the collection is the target, and more lamellar surgery, so that at least the utilization rate will improve for the DALC, and training of corneal surgeon. Again, some places is abundant surgeons, some places nobody is there, and well-designed corneal distribution system so that we don't waste a single cornea which is usable. And again, more transplantation center. For that, EBAI or government should take more interest for getting, because like Dr. Bhatia told, it takes more than 1 year. Same situation in Odisha also is not better. And quality control accreditation, we should start for all eye bank, like the hospital NABA. Similarly, accreditation should be mandatory to maintain the quality. For that, again, what is the planning? Just we can't start overnight. We need to train the assessor. We need a lot of assessor if we want to cover throughout India. And who will be the accreditation organization, that we need to decide. So graft registry is available in many countries, though we do, again, EBAI also need to get recipient information so that to build up graft registry. To plan for the graft registry, we need to design a database, we need to train people, and proper documentation by corneal surgeon. Because we need to know not only the uses, again the follow-up, how the graft was, how many graft failed, how many lamellar graft failed, how many penetrating graft failed. So we all know that we have a long waiting list as for the first or second slide where I showed is required. But we did a survey during lockdown which says hardly, like before COVID, less than 70 days. Hardly anybody, any surgeon is waiting for, any surgeon or eye bank is waiting more than 90 days. So the waiting list is almost, I'll say, nil in many parts of the world. So I don't know whether real there is a waiting list or not. Anybody who asks, they say, no, we don't have a waiting list. So that is the controversial point comes sending tissue across the border. If we don't have a waiting list, why are you waiting for the sending tissue across the borders? It may be the state, it may be the across India. It may not be now, but at least we should plan from now that we can send the tissue across the border. The bottom line is we should not waste any single tissue. Either we have a long-term utilization, a long-term safe life, either vision graft or anything, or we should plan to send the tissue. For that, we need to have a data whether is that still 1 lakh, 2 lakh existing, although we have not reached the 2 lakh or 1 lakh utilization. But how come the surgeons are saying they don't have a waiting list? So for that, we need again the epidemiological data to know about the demand supply gap, and we need to change the legislation if we want to send across the state. Many states are allowed, but luckily Maharashtra is now they're allowed to send. So paradigm shift in eye banking is already happened. More emphasis on utilization. Most of the people are using Cornisol or Optisol per collection, while many eye banks are still in MK. We collect in MK. We change to Cornisol in case we want to send to outside. And the eye bank has to be self-sustainable. We have to start charging processing fee charity model to self-sustainable model. Otherwise 735 eye banks and practically 20 eye banks work. And preparation of pre-cut tissues, again like Sunita mentioned, many have started, and Demacrol we started distributing. So way forward, it's eye banking activity in all states, and we need to develop donation counselor as well as training. I'll say technician come counselor is the best, and training of general ophthalmologist for treating patient with corneal transplant. Otherwise, we lost many grafts. A more trained corneal surgeon, more lamellar surgery. We need to have epidemiological information about corneal blindness. We have to plan for corneal graft registry, mandatory accreditation, and we need to involve more in advocacy and policy making. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sujata. It's extremely, the situation is so volatile with our states, and the way that every state looks at eye banking in general, many of them with a very jaundiced eye. Somehow they feel that we are evil creatures out to steal corneas, make money by hook or by crook. I mean, that's the attitude. In our own state, I know that we have had 3 writ petitions filed just to get what was our due. One was just to get the money which the government is supposed to give for eye donation, which we had not got for 6 years. We filed a writ and we got that. Then to allow corneas to go out of Maharashtra, we filed a writ and we got that done. But every time you can't, it's an expensive process to file writs, and it's not the core area of eye banking. So I think every eye bank should have a lawyer in their team of board, in their board of directors or whatever, so that they can guide them at least pro bono. The way, I mean, looking at 2030, I don't think attitudes of the authorities is going to change. So we'll need a lot of lobbying, I feel, from our EBAI at the center. We can't lobby states. But if the center changes its thinking, like we are trying to get delinking of cornea from HOTA, because so many things out in HOTA is not applicable to cornea. We tried that with a lot of influence. We got to meet somebody very high up in the health ministry. And then his personal opinion, which he put down on paper to us, is that I don't see what's wrong with the present system. After pointing out 10, 15 different things which are wrong, He just said, I don't think, and he's put it down on paper. When an IAS officer puts down something on paper, his next 3 years, 3 people who transfer to that post don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole because somebody's put it down on paper. So these are, I think, some of the challenges that we will face in up to 2030 is sensitizing government authorities, getting the delinking of cornea from HOTA, and getting them to allow free movement first within the country, and then hopefully we becoming surplus and sending out. So especially tissue like vision graft and all has the potential to be a game changer. We can send it to neighboring countries as well and earn some money for the i-banking movement. But let us remain. I think we have to remain positive. If we who are in this room continue to remain positive in spite of odds, only then we will achieve. Because very easy to get defeated by the attitudes of the powers that be. But we just have to keep on pushing a little, 2 steps here, 1 step back, but then move forward. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, Raki.
So one request to you and Dr. Sujata is that the THOTA registration for the iBank as well as the corneal surgeon is becoming more difficult and difficult. Not because the process are difficult, because the inspectors who come to inspect, they are not aware about anything. So they come as a mindset that because they are the inspectors, they can ask anything, everything. And it's more become that how much you can entertain them at that point of time instead of showing them the documentation and all. So one thing, if like in Telangana, I know that EBAI, a representative is a part of the team in the inspection team. We in UP, in Rajasthan and Delhi, we get inspectors who are not even aware about cornea or eye banking. They may be from retina or glaucoma or pediatric ophthalmology. So if we can take it, I know it's a state subject, but at least with National Program for Control of Blindness, if we take it as a representation and more of a repetitive basis, it can help others. And because I know that Karan, while he was filing his TOTA certification, a lot of conversation, whom to contact, which form to fill. So if we can train people as an iBank association, what is the list of document they will be asking for, what are the kind of equipments they needs to be there. So at least a standard training module for the iBankers as well as the cornea surgeons to help them getting the TOTA certificate in a more easier manner. That will definitely help us.
I'll add to that. So 2 centers I was in, sir. So first, one center was applied on Jan 2022. Inspector did not come. Things happened. It's still nothing has happened. Some documentation, some error they have later on put it up. It's still not happened. My center, my personal center, I applied in September, October. I've got the thing, but that was because my inspection happened earlier. In November, they were supposed to schedule for December, but they came earlier on November. Inspection done in November, all approved, everything done. Then it took 3-4 months for the file to reach there, and for 1 month or more than 2 months, the file was on the IAS officer who was the head's table. Nothing done about it. Calling every day, please do something about it. Sending people across, it was a big challenge. Finally, I got somehow to connect to their office. I spoke to the IAS officer, madam, many patients are waiting, please sign. 30 minutes it was signed in this. But why this process? If we are trying to serve patients, something if EBI can do this process, a centralized process, it will really help, rather than going to the state for this.
Yeah.
One common problem which we face is that you have already got the certification for your iBank or for your cornea transplant center. Now you have applied for the renewal, and 3 months have elapsed. Renewal inspection has not occurred, but surgeon knows that whenever the renewal will occur, it will be from the back date. So can surgeon perform surgeries during this period or not?
It's very, very dependent on your state. Our iBank, we had the same issue in Maharashtra. So our iBank wrote to the government that please allow us to give tissue or tell us no, one way or the other, that an iBank or an eye transplant center whose registration has lapsed, but they've already applied for fresh, can we continue giving so we had asked this question, and very cleverly we had put down that in absence of any communication from you, we will deem it as consent from your side to give so we know that the government takes a long time to answer any question. So our iBank continue to give tissue to those people, but at our risk. That we took that. Many iBanks are not willing to take that risk. So if you write to the government saying that we will continue to supply, in case you have any objection to this, please let us know. So if the iBank writes to the government, then even if those fellows take 1 year to reply, you keep supplying. That is what we found worked.
Yeah, it's like hospital, same thing.
So
Hospital, we don't
same thing.
close down. No, when the renewal happens, we don't close down. I think we can either we can write we are continuing in your.
I am Dr. Madharia from Bilaspur, Chhattisgarh. In our small state, what we have made to accelerate the things, as the doctor is telling, the facing the problem of that inspector is coming and all this thing. We directly talked to our health minister and we requested him in the health department, at least the deputy director, who is doctor, who is sensible, he should be the in charge of this such type of sensitive things. So he's agreed. And Dr. Subhas Mishra at our Chhattisgarh, he is the deputy director who is in charge of all these things. So we can directly talk to him. The things are very much accelerated. And it may be the problem in the bigger state, IS person are sitting, so it is really a biggest hurdle.
Yeah.
IS, they are the biggest hurdle. They don't know anything, but they think he is the boss of everything.
Yeah.
This is very unfortunate thing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
So I'm from Bihar, and it's got very limited number of iBanks, as you know. So one thing that my suggestion was that, as Madam was telling, that many people do not know that how to go about establishing an iBank. So could the EBAI put these, notate it step by step on its website, because anybody wanting to establish would first of all Google iBank Association of India. We'd like to go, know things from you.
Yeah,
So
we're
if we
revamping
could-
the website. Maybe this is a good idea.
if you can put it on the step by step,
Yeah.
how to establish an iBank, and step by step, who to
All three.
contact
How to
the
establish
first-
an iBank, an EDC, and a transplant center.
and the logistics of it, sir.
Yeah.
Who do you apply to? What a standard format of an application that can be written for this purpose?
I think you've got something already.
It's the website we're planning to change.
I think
Yes,
it'll be done
please.
soon.
A standard, that will become a standard, protocol. So just we take down that document, and you can fill in the name, and then we can apply.
Yeah.
That would be.
You'll
that
still
would be
have to
so
tweak it a little for your local authorities, but
that's all right, sir.
by
At
and large,
least
80% of the work is
this
already
be
done.
sir.
Yeah.
For us.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Come, I invite Rakhi to come and tell us about keeping pace with advancing technology and training.
Good morning, everyone. So my topic today is keeping pace with advancing technology and training. And as usual, technology glitches.
Sir, can I ask one more question, sir?
Okay.
No problem. We're talking about EBI only.
Yeah.
Sir, can I ask one more pertinent
yeah.
question, sir? Sir, there was this, we are from Bihar, so the SOTO Bihar is established at IGIMS, and it's working as of the location is there as of now. So what had happened? Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
So what had happened that is once one of the people who were counsel for eye donation agreed to a whole body donation suddenly. Okay, now in our hospital there's no provision for a whole body donation. So when I tried to contact SOTO, so how this could be expedited or what could be done about it. So they wanted that all the records, that medical records of the patient should be WhatsApped to the SOTO person. I said, these are confidential records of the hospital, and it's a government hospital. So how can we WhatsApp it to you? He said, no, it's a done thing. We do it in Delhi. But I said, no, this is Bihar. So without we cannot do it. So exactly, sir, what are the legalities of it, and really can it be done? Can this be done actually?
It's huge gray areas over there,
Yeah.
because these people who are in power just make their own rules. There's nothing written anywhere,
Okay.
and then they simply deny you permission because you've not complied with their bizarre requests.
True.
So
sir.
it is a bizarre request, but then I think you need to comply with that if you want to get your work done. Send the hospital records, and you have it on the Soto person asked for it, who is a legal functionary. Yeah.
Okay, he's a legal functionary. So
Yeah.
it wouldn't be illegal to be sending
It's not
requests to
illegal.
him.
No, it's not. You're
Okay.
sending it to Soto person. It's not to a private person.
So are eye counselors going to this is a one-time thing that has happened, sir.
Exactly.
Counseling
It
for
won't be-
eye
it's quite
donation,
rare. It's
agreeing
quite
to
rare.
the whole body donation.
It's quite rare, but go ahead and comply.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, sir.
So, good morning again. My topic is keeping pace with advancing technology and training. And now the buzzword these days is artificial intelligence, chat GPT, everything going on, technical advancements, etc., etc. I also tried to use some of the AI in making my presentation just to test whether this works or not. So, I'll talk about how can we stay updated on technological advancements. As an eye banker, corneal surgeons, as a fraternity, we need to always be updated on what's happening in the world. So we need to regularly monitor and stay informed about the latest technologies, techniques, and equipments used in eye banking. This includes advancement in corneal imaging, preservation methods, tissue evaluation, and surgical procedures. We need to attend conferences, workshops, and webinars related to eye banking and collaborate with experts in the field to exchange knowledge and experiences. I feel attending the conferences and workshops for the eye bankers is very, very important. But if we look at the presence of them in any conference, it's only the Eye Bank Association of India's conference in India, where we will see the actual eye bankers coming and presenting and learning from each other. Otherwise, there are not many opportunities for them to learn, especially for the managers, technicians, and the recovery and the counselors. So I think as a group we can work on having more smaller workshops, even on online virtually, where we can increase their attendance. Collaborate with the research institutions and industry. Normally, when we talk about research and collaboration with the industry, we will only look at bigger eye banks. It's LV Prasad or Arvind or other AIMS, etc., who collaborate and do the research. We also need to look at, like when we're talking about septicemia, a larger sample size, we need to work together as an eye bank fraternity to do these kind of research and collaborate with the research institutions. We need to create partnership with the research institutions, universities for cutting edge research. Just an example, for the Eye Bank Society of Rajasthan, they have collaborated with the IHMR, Indian Institute of Health Management and Research, to do a study to find out how many corneal blind patients are in Rajasthan. So they are doing a similar. We can have similar kind of studies at different states as well. Industry leaders to gain access to new product development. So we all need to, as an eye banker, corneal surgeons, need to be in touch with the industry leaders, because we have somehow our very own specific requirement. Even how to make a tray which is easy to carry in the recovery technician kit, we can actually work with the industry people and have them custom made for us. And this is done at the individual level many of the time, but not as a group. Stay involved in the clinical trials and studies that evaluate the efficacy of the new technologies and treatments. So that is very, very important. Talking about the new innovations and research, currently there's an organization named Black Frog Technologies. They created a very small refrigerator to carry the vaccine from one place to another. So somehow we met them at Mangalore, and it's a Mangalore-based organization. And then we thought it's a good idea if we can have similar kind of setup to carry the tissues from one place to another. And we are doing at Dr. Shroff Charity Eye Hospital, we are doing a study with them to test the efficacy of the small refrigerator, that what is the temperature in the ice box, what's the temperature in that machine, how efficient it is. So we have started the study in April, and we will be looking at many of the sample sizes to see that how efficient that is. And if we feel that that's efficient, then we will definitely come to EBAI to see that how can we promote and we can use them at a larger level. Continuous professional development. So training is the key word for the iBankers, more and more trainings. So we need to encourage the iBanking staff to engage in continuous professional development to enhance their knowledge and skills. We need to offer them training programs, workshops, certifications related to new technologies, quality assurance, regulatory compliances, and best practices in iBanking, and provide opportunities for the staff to attend relevant conferences and seminars to stay updated. Regarding the certification, I again feel that's a very large gap in our system where we don't have a certification system for the recovery technicians, donation counselors, evaluation technicians. What is done is more at an individual level. If we look at iBank Association of America, they have this certification named CEBT, Certified iBank Technician. And it is such a reputed certificate for them that they carry it on their sleeve. They will write it as a degree in their every presentation, every paper. You will find that CEBT written there. It's that prestigious, and they have to renew it every year. Like they have to go through the annual competency and again renew it. So maybe iBank Association of India can start a similar certification process, especially for the recovery technicians and evaluation technicians, because the graph depends on the type of tissue which they are getting and how they are getting. So that is something which we definitely as a group need to look into. Quality assurance and standardizations. We need to implement the quality assurance programs and adhere to established standards and guidelines, especially by the guidelines of National Program for Control of Blindness. We need to regularly review and update protocols and procedures to incorporate advancements in technology and best practices. And we need to also ensure that the staff is trained and they follow the standardized protocols to maintain consistent quality. Maintaining the quality and training of staff is important, because once I was having a conversation with two of the technicians and they said, "Ma'am, हम तो 2 minute में कौनिया निकाल लेते हैं." So they were taking it more as like कि मैं कितना process fast करता हूँ. I said, no, it's not about how fast you can take it. How clean, how aseptically you can take is more important. So every step which is written in the SOP needs to be followed. If it's 15 minutes, 20 minutes, your efficiency or your performance is not the minutes in which you take it out. It's how aseptically you take it out, how properly you take it out. So I think this needs to be also like inculcated in our technicians, that we need to do it in a more proper manner. Networking and knowledge sharing. We need to foster a culture of networking and knowledge sharing within the iBanking community. Currently, we are at a stage where there's a lot of knowledge within the group itself. If we look at the Indian iBanking, if we look at the top 10 iBanks or top 20 iBanks, there's a lot of knowledge present there. And then there are areas where there is no knowledge. If you go to Northeast, there is no iBank. There is no training programs available there. So we as a group need to foster that. How can we collaborate together and learn from each other instead of like waiting for some foreign agency to come and train us now? I think we have enough knowledge that we can train Africa, we can train Bangladesh, we can train Nepal, everywhere. Engage with the other iBanks, transplant organizations, and professional societies. It is also very important that we also see that how can we collaborate with organ donation organizations like Mohan Foundation, Orbo, and I'm pretty sure Soto, Roto, etc. How can we start the dialogue with them and then continue working with them? Participate in collaborative initiatives and committees focused on advancing iBanking practices and technology. There's a huge gap which was earlier and still remains there. So in southern part of the country, we do have two large iBanks, LV Prasad Eye Institute and Arvind Eye Institute. And they are big training centers, but they are in the southern part of the country. In northern part of the country, there was no training center available. And people were facing the issue of like travel, etc. So, and of course, the other gap is the implementation of the quality protocols, and proper orientation and trainings are required for that. In year 2021, at Dr. Shroff Charity Eye Hospital, they started a Jagat Singh iBank Training Academy. It's the first formal iBank Training Academy in the northern part of the country. It's in Delhi, to provide world-class training to strengthen iBanking in our country and to be a partner of choice for iBankers seeking opportunities to learn new skills. Why the name Jagat Singh? Jagat Singh was a counselor who started working with the Dr. Shroff Charity Eye Hospital when he was an 18-year-old guy. And he was the counselor who trained many of the counselors in Delhi. He also trained me to be the counselor. Yes, sir? Yeah. So that, and he passed away in 2020. And we thought, there is no other way by which we can pay tribute to him, so that academy is by his name. This academy is a one-stop solution for all iBanking training needs, where a lot of technologies is used, virtual training programs, webinars, etc. If you look at the iBank we all know that these activities: public awareness, tissue harvesting, distribution, evaluation, preservation, quality assurance, and pre-cut tissue preparation. All these needs different kind of training. There is no like one solution for everyone. So there are different training programs for every place. Training programs which are required in the iBanking are the iBank technician, the counselor, corneal evaluation technician, iBank manager, amniotic membrane preparation, corneal transplant coordinator. I have recently added this corneal transplant coordinator here because if we look at the NABH guideline, they have this specific requirement to have a trained corneal transplant coordinator who is dealing with the recipients. And they need to have a formal training certificate with them. So there are no training institutes or training certification available for these, but this is an NABH requirement. So it's more or less done internally right now with the institutes where NABH is happening. Technology for training. So in COVID, we have learned how can you go for virtual meetings, online workshops, distance learning. We can have hybrid curriculum, online, wet labs, and in-person training modules as well. Especially after the COVID, even the World iBanking Symposium, the GAIBA, the iBank Association of America, all went online. And it was a fantastic opportunity for every one of us to go attend those programs, submit our abstract as well. So many of the people even presented there. So I think going more into using the technology for the trainings and for presentations and making our presence felt at the international forum is very important. Of course, training is about doing the right things the right way. Training is also about training the staff on SOPs, quality documentation practices, and it's not a one-time event. We have to go for trainings, more trainings, refresher trainings, and again trainings. Tissue harvesting is very, very essential. So I say an experienced recovery technician also needs to go for an annual competency review, annual competency assessment every year. And they need to be certified by either iBank Association of India or a panel of experts which say that, okay, this person has gone through the annual competency assessment. Here are some of the workshop glimpses here, recovery technicians. This was by the EBAI where we were working on to standardize the recovery processes. Train the Trainer program. This was for the first time was initiated at the Bangalore EBAI conference and got a huge response from the medical directors, iBank managers, and the senior recovery technicians, where they were specifically trained how to use a published Reaper tool to evaluate the performance of the iBank recovery technicians. These are again some of the photographs of the ERT training workshops, evaluation technician training, pre-cut procedure trainings. Amniotic membrane is another buzzword in the field of iBanking now because everyone asks for the amniotic membrane, but only I think LV Prasad and few other iBanks provide the amniotic membrane currently. The future of the iBanking. I would say that digital iBanking is the future. With advancing technology, we can provide better training, faster processing, higher quality corneal tissues for transplant. And it's not that we use technology. We live the technology these days. So we can't shy away from using technology at all level of iBanking, started from the counselor to the medical director and the corneal surgeons. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present today. And I would like to thank Dr. Manisha Acharya and Mr. Surinder Dikshit, who supported me with preparing this PPT, as well as they also run the JS iBank Training Academy. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Raki.
Thank you, Raki. Raki, how this training academy that you've started, it's open to you're training people mainly in North India, or you made
No, sir, we are open
module?
we have modules. We have all the modules available with us. So basically, a lot of work was done before launching the academy. So we have modules for counselor, technicians, evaluation technicians, even the medical directors. Till now, we have trained from 2021 68 candidates from all across the country. We have trained one candidate from Meghalaya as well as a recovery technician. One from the medical director of Ethiopia iBank is trained here. And we are currently in training Nepal, the AMG preparation at Nepal iBank. The person is trained here. So it's open for everyone who can understand Hindi and English.
So that again, I think should be on the EBAI website so that more people can take advantage
Sure,
of
sir.
this training,
Sure.
because I'm sure yours is a not-for-profit. So
Yes, sir. So there is a nominal fee,
Yeah,
but
fair enough, yeah.
but if the iBank is in a
No, the iBank can
yes.
sponsor it.
Yeah,
The
iBank is
local iBank
sponsoring
which
it.
can send
Local
that.
iBank sponsors.
The fee doesn't matter, but just the fact that it's there so that more people can be made aware
Sure.
of this, because it's something unique. And we used to train from our iBank when we were affiliated with IFTB. IFTB would send people from many of the African countries to our iBank to train people, but then we had an IFTB protocol. Now IFTB is dead. So something like this is local, we can use
Sure,
this. Yeah.
sure, sir. Will do.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Dr. Rekha will now present to us on everything we need to know about donor corneal endothelium analysis.
Good morning. I thank the EBI for giving me this opportunity. So I'll be speaking on donor cornea endothelial analysis from retrieval to dispatch. So we know the endothelial cell density serves as a measurement for the functional status of a cornea, and that's what we look when we get a cornea for transplant. So this study we did because sometimes what happens during maybe holidays or festival seasons, we get very good corneas, and immediately there's no utilization, and even doctors outside don't require it. So we analyze the endothelial soon after retrieval, 48 hours later, 78 hours later, and 72 hours later also, 3 times. So beyond 72 hours, usually within 72 hours, we utilized all the corneas. So, and the corneas chosen for the study were of excellent and a very good grade. The corneas which were on the borderline endothelial, we did not use that for analyzing. And the second evaluation was done 48 hours later, and the third was done after 72 hours. We have an in our SOP also, it maintains that we need to reevaluate the cornea before distributing it to the surgeon anytime after 24 hours if a surgeon needs a cornea. So basically a slit lamp examination and a Conan specular microscope was used, and donor corneas were all retrieved from HCRP only. We analyzed, we did not consider the voluntary donation. So a screening protocol which is followed by all eye banks, that's pre-retrieval pen torch, only suitable corneas retrieved, in situ was done, cornea preserved in cortisol, medical screening was done, slit lamp evaluation, serology, and a specular analysis was done. So 124 donors were analyzed, and we saw that 87 eyes were collected within 6 hours of death. 52 eyes were collected within 6 to 8 hours of death, and beyond 8 to 12 hours were 27 eyes. These were the corneas donors who were preserved in cold storage, and the storage preservation was done within 6 hours of death. And we analyzed the donor age. Most of our donors were between 21 to 40 years of age, and the majority, that's almost 50.5% of the donors belong to that age group, and our youngest donor was 13 years of age. So when it came to cause of death, hanging was the most common cause of death. Second came heart attack, road traffic accident, poisoning. They were all organophosphorus poisoning, and we've been using this organophosphorus from day one. We've been using it, and donor age versus specular when it was seen, we found that younger donors, that 10 to 40 years, we had an endothelial count of about 3000 cells, and from 41 to 50 41 to 51 it was about 2800, still about 2500, and 51 to 71 it was about 2700 cells. So even the older donors, we had a good endothelial cells, and CV and 6x were also quite good. So the first specular, which was done 6 to 9 hours after retrieval, we found the average CD to be 2961, CV was 35, and 6A was 55%. The second specular was done 48 hours later, and we found no significant change between the cell density or the hexagonal cell or the CV cells. There was not much of no significance. So up to 48 hours, it was as good as 24 hours, the cornea endothelial cell density and other parameters. Now, after 72 hours, we found that the cell density decreased much more in hanging cases. OP poisoning was the maximum decrease in cell density. Then came the cardiac arrest and the RTA cases. So, these hanging cases, we have done a study where we found the deterioration of the cornea to be much more. I think that is again because one is because the time of death is exactly not known. The second one is because when they hang themselves, the intraocular pressure goes up, and that also damages the specular counts. I mean, the endothelial count is gets damaged. The other thing we also noticed, there was a decrease in CV and hexagonal cells in all the groups after 72 hours. So for the pre-cut tissue, we did about 91 corneas we analyzed from 20 to 50 years. So we found the pre-cut, but all these pre-cut tissues were done within 48 hours of retrieval. There was not, it was done, pre-cut was done, specular was done just before doing the, using the microkeratome. And it was again repeated soon after doing microkeratome, and we found that there was not much of a difference. So maybe the technicality was good, and we didn't find any difference between the pre-cut and the post-cut. But we have not used the microkeratome or done the pre-cut after 72 hours. So finally, I would like to say that the endothelial cell density is one of the methods by which the viability of the cornea can be checked. Hanging cases and OP poisoning, the endothelial count definitely decreases with CV and hexagonal cell after 72 hours. So the age and time of retrieval to preservation did not contribute much for deterioration of the cornea up to 72 hours. After 72 hours, the hexagonal cells, the CD and the CV decreases. Microkeratomes cut was done all within 48 hours, and we did not find much of a difference between the pre-cut and the post-cut. So I feel utilization of the cornea and all the preservation was in cortisol. So I feel the utilization of the cornea within 72 hours would be ideal for good surgical outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Rekha. All these was done by a single observer because, there's so much variation in if multiple observers do the endothelial cell.
No, multiple people have done the thing.
Yeah, so some amount of variability will occur because
yes.
even if I do an endothelial cell now and
but
after 48 hours.
There are only two technicians who do this. So only both of them did all the study.
Okay.
So I think the variability may be less as such.
Okay.
You collect in cortisol from the beginning for the
Yes. We directly put into cortisol.
The study is good. Only one thing is that hanging thing, I don't know how significant difference.
Yeah.
But like Dr. Muscati told, there is huge variation.
Yeah.
Specular, unless you do 3 times, because you don't know which area you focus.
Yeah.
The same person,
You
intra-person or...
focus on a different area the next time, and then you
Yeah.
get a different.
We only.
But by the rule of thumb, what your conclusion is acceptable, that there's not much change, so everyone should be happy that up to 72 hours you're
Yeah.
okay. Also, the medium is cortisol, while most of us put it in MK, and then if it's not utilized, then we transfer it into by after 48 hours. If there's no demand or something, then we transfer it into cortisol.
I think we reject quite a bit corneas in the hospital itself. Like sometimes they take a photograph and send it to us. We find there's some infiltration, something, we tell them. We were doing the MK media and cortisol, but I thought the cost factor was going up a little bit. So that's
Yeah.
why we stopped and started using only cortisol.
Yeah, so it again depends on iBank. So most of the time our corneas go within 48 hours. So we put less than 50% of them from MK into cortisol. Yeah.
Okay.
That's why.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Any comments from anybody else?
Yes.
Yeah.
Where are the NK media in 1982?
LV Prasad Eye Institute.
1982, I gave a project to manufacture NK media.
Yes.
To RP Center.
Okay.
1982. Then 1992, I gave it to LV Prasad. Now, nowhere there will. But Sun Pharma people told if you give permission, we will manufacture.
No, LV Prasad is doing it.
At the moment, LV Prasad is supplying all over the country, the MK medium. But if is your technology of making it different from what LV Prasad is using? Is it different? Is it cheaper? Is it more?
That is a technical 1980 technical.
Yeah. So you'll have to talk. So you'll have to talk to LV Prasad and find out whether they're using your technique or some other technique to make it.
1982, they were not manufacturing.
No, 82
No.
anyway, LV Prasad.
No.
Has not there.
There was no LV Prasad in 82.
Did.
So it came in 86.
Yes.
1982, LV Prasad. 82 in RP Center.
RP Center. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think with that we come to
Yeah.
an end. So we thank all the presenters and the audience for a good interactive session amongst ourselves. And I thank Dr. Sujata Das for helping me to chair this session. And we hand over the stage to the next session. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Muscati, for chairing the session.
Thank you.